Hey guys, today we're going to look at 30, 60, 90 triangles. So last time we were together, we looked at 45, 45, 90 triangles, and we saw that all of their sides have a nice pretty proportion to them, right? So the same sort of thing is going to happen with 30, 60, 90 triangles. Every 30, 60, 90 triangle is similar to every other 30, 60, 90 triangle because they have congruent angles. All right, so there's three different sides. Across from the smallest angle is my short leg. Across from my 60-degree angle is my long leg. And across from the right angle, like always, is going to be my hypotenuse. All right. So we want to see if there's a pattern. So one thing you might notice is that if we take that short leg and multiply it by 2, we get the hypotenuse. If we take that short leg and multiply it by 2, we get the hypotenuse. If we take that short leg and multiply it by 2, we get the hypotenuse. Now let's look and see what's happening with that long leg. So remember, our hypotenuse is the side across from the right angle, so that'll be 8. So let's set up the Pythagorean theorem. 4 squared plus x squared equals 8 squared. 4 squared is 16, plus x squared equals 8 squared is 64. Then we'll subtract 16 from both sides. X squared equals 48. Then we'll take the square root of both sides to get x by itself. Square and square root cancel each other out, so we're just left with x. And then we've got this square root of 48. Now we need to simplify him. What's the biggest perfect square that goes into 48? 16, and that's 16 times 3. We'll split those up into two separate square roots. Square root of 16, square root of 3. The square root of 16 is 4, and we'll keep that square root 3 on the end. So x will equal 4 square root 3. Good deal. Now let's look at this next one. So we'll have 5 squared plus x squared equals 10 squared. We know 10 is going to be c because it's across from my right angle. 5 squared is 25 plus x squared equals 10 squared is 100. We'll subtract 25 from both sides and get 75. And then we'll take the square root of both sides. Squared and square root cancel out, so we're just left with x. And then we have that square root of 75 that now we need to simplify. What's the biggest perfect square that goes into 75? 25. 75 is 25 times 3. Then we'll split it up into its own square roots. The square root of 25 is 5, and we'll keep the square root of 3 on the end. So that will be 5 square root 3. Once again on that last one, my right angle across from that is going to be my hypotenuse, there's c. Now, what I've noticed so far is that when my short leg was 4, my long leg was 4 square root 3. When my short leg was 5, my long leg was 5 square root 3. So over here, my short leg is 6. Is this going to end up being 6 square root 3? Because that would stick with my pattern if it did. Let's find out. So we've got 6 squared plus x squared equals 12 squared. 6 squared is 36 plus x squared equals, and then 12 squared is 144. We'll subtract 36 on both sides and end up with 108. Then we'll take the square root of both sides to get x by itself. Square and square root cancel out, so we're just left with x. And then we have the square root of 108. Now let's simplify. What's the biggest perfect square that goes into 108? 36, right? That'd be 36 times 3. Break those up into their own square root. Square root of 36, square root of 3. Square root of 36 is 6. And then we have that square root 3 on the end. So yes, that is what my long leg ended up being. So let's take a look about each of our different rules. What do we know about the side opposite the 30-degree angle? So it is half the length of the hypotenuse. We also know it's the shortest side. Short leg. What do we know about the side opposite the 60-degree angle, or I like to call it the long leg? We were able to find the long leg by taking the short leg and multiplying by the square root of 3. Now, since all of these triangles are similar to each other, since they all have congruent angles, that means that their sides are going to have a proportion. So my short leg will go over 1. The long leg, remember I needed to multiply the short leg by the square root of 3. So square root 3 is going to go under the long leg. Remember I had to double the short leg to get to the hypotenuse, so since I multiplied it by 2, there's a 2 underneath the hypotenuse. Then we'll choose two fractions and cross multiply. Okay, let's try a few. So in this first one, opposite the 30-degree angle, or my short leg, is going to be 15. Opposite the 60-degree angle, or the long leg, is going to be y. And then the hypotenuse across from the right angle is going to be x. Now to solve for x, we're going to take the fraction that has x in it. That's a x over 2. And we're going to set it equal to the other fraction that has just numbers in it, 15 over 1. And then we'll solve by cross multiplying. 1 times x is x. 2 times 15 is 30. Now let's solve for y. We're going to take the fraction that has y in it, y over the square root of 3 equals, and then we'll take our fraction with just numbers in it, the 15 over 1. Then we'll cross multiply. 1 times y is y. Then we'll multiply 15 times the square root of 3. Since 15 is a regular people number and the square root of 3 is a square root, we'll just put them next to each other. 15 square root 3. Okay, on this next one, opposite the 30-degree angle, so my short leg, that will be 50. Opposite the 60-degree angle, so my long leg, that's y. The hypotenuse across from my right angle is x. So we want to solve for x first. The fraction with x in it, x over 2 equals. And then I need my fraction with y, or with plain old numbers in it, is 50 over 1. Then we'll cross multiply to solve. 1 times x is x. 2 times 50 is 100. Now let's solve for y. We have y over the square root of 3 equals, and then we'll need our fraction with just numbers in it, 50 over 1. Then we'll cross multiply. 1 times y is y, and then we'll take 50 times the square root of 3, so we'll have 50 square root 3. Okay, go ahead and fill in these boxes with the appropriate things from this triangle. All right, so your short leg should be the square root of 6. opposite the 30-degree angle. Opposite the 60-degree angle, that's going to be x, my long leg. And then my hypotenuse across from the right angle is going to be y. So we'll solve for x. We've got x over the square root of 3 equals, and then we'll use our fraction with just numbers in it, square root of 6 over 1. Then we'll cross multiply. 1 times x is 1x, and then we'll multiply 6 and 3 together underneath the same square root since they're both square roots. So then we end up with the square root of 18. But then we need to simplify. What's the biggest perfect square that goes into 18? Yeah, 9. So this is the same thing as the square root of 9 times the square root of 2. The square root of 9 is 3, and then we have square root 2 on the end. Now let's look for y. So we're going to use our fraction with y in it, y over 2 equals, and then our fraction with just plain old numbers, the square root of 6 over 1. Then we'll cross multiply. 1 times y is y. 2 times the square root of 6, since those are not the same kind of number, I can't really put those together, so that'll just have to be 2 square root 6. All right, on this next one, our short leg opposite the 30-degree angle is going to be x. Our long leg opposite the 60-degree angle is going to be 18 square root 3. And then our hypotenuse across from the right angle is going to be y. So let's solve for x first. We'll have the fraction with x in it, x over 1 equals. And then the fraction with just numbers in it, 18 square root 3 over square root 3. Sorry about the music. So there's 2 different ways you can go about this. You can cross multiply. Square root 3 times x is square root 3x. 1 times 18 square root 3 is 18 square root 3. Then we'll divide by the square root of 3 on both sides. And the square root 3's will actually divide away on both sides. So x equals 18. Or from this very beginning step, x divided by 1 is x. 18 square root 3 divided by square root 3, those square root 3's cancel out, so we're just left with x. Or 18, I'm sorry. Now let's solve for y. So y over 2 equals 18 square root 3 over the square root of 3. So then we'll cross multiply. Square root of 3 times y is square root 3y equals. And then 2 times 18 square root 3. 2 times 18 is 36. Then we have the square root of 3 after that. We'll divide by the square root of 3 on both sides to get y by itself. So y will equal 36. Or at this point, you could have had y over 2. And you might have seen that 18 square root 3 over square root 3, that's just 18. And we can put him over 1. And then cross multiply. And y would equal 36. All right. So our short leg opposite the 30-degree angle is going to be x. My long leg opposite the 60-degree angle is going to be y. My hypotenuse across from the right angle is going to be 12. So we need to solve for x first. X over 1 equals, the fraction with just numbers in it, 12 over 2. Then we'll cross multiply. 2 times x is 2x. 1 times 12 is 12. So then to get x by itself, we'll divide by 2 on both sides. And x will equal 6. All right, so to solve for y, we're going to take the fraction that has y in it, y over the square root of 3 equals. Then the fraction with just numbers in it, 12 over 2. And we'll cross multiply. 2 times y is 2y. 12 times the square root of 3 is 12 square root 3. Then we'll divide by 2 on both sides. Since 12 and 2 are both normal people numbers, I'll divide those and get 6. And the square root of 3 will just come along for the ride. All right. In this next one, opposite my 30-degree angle is my short leg. That's going to be y. Opposite my 60-degree angle, that's my long leg. That's going to be x. Opposite the right angle is 4 square root 3. That's my hypotenuse. So to solve for x, I'll take the fraction that had x in it, x over the square root of 3 equals, and then the fraction that just has numbers in it, 4 square root 3. That goes over 2. Then we'll cross multiply. X times 2 is 2x equals, and then we have 4 square root 3 times the square root of 3. So remember, square root 3 times square root 3 equals the square root of 9, or 3. So now I really have 4 times 3. We know that 4 times 3 is 12, so we'll divide by 2 on both sides, and x will equal 6. Now we'll solve for y. We'll take the fraction that has y in it, y over 1, and the fraction with just numbers, 4 square root 3 over 2. Then we'll cross multiply. 2 times y is 2y. 1 times 4 square root 3 is 4 square root 3. Then we'll divide by 2 on both sides. 4 and 2 are both normal people numbers, so we'll divide those. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and square root 3 just comes along for the ride. Okay. Now, opposite my 30-degree angle is going to be my short leg, that's x. Opposite my 60-degree angle is my long leg, that's 22. The hypotenuse is across from the right angle, and he is y. So I'll use my fraction that has x in it, x over 1 equals, and then my fraction with just numbers in it, 22 over the square root of 3. So we can cross multiply. Square root of 3x equals 22. Then we'll have to divide by the square root of 3 on both sides to get x by itself. But remember, we can't actually leave our answer like that. We need to multiply by whatever the square root is on the bottom to rationalize our denominator. So 22 times the square root of 3 is 22 square root 3. The square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, or 3. So we'll have 22 square root 3 over 3. And we'll actually leave it just like that. Now let's look at y. So y goes over 2. And then my fraction with just numbers in it is 22 over the square root of 3. And then we'll cross multiply. Square root 3 times y is square root 3y. 2 times 22 is 44. Then we'll divide by the square root of 3 on both sides. But we can't just leave it as 44 divided by the square root of 3. We have to multiply by the square root on the bottom to rationalize our denominator. 44 times the square root of 3 is 44 square root 3. Square root 3 times square root 3 is the square root of 9, or 3. Okay, last one. So my short leg here opposite my 30-degree angle is x. My long leg opposite the 60-degree angle is 18. And my hypotenuse across from the right angle is going to be y. So to solve for x, I'll take the fraction that has x in it, x over 1 equals, and then the fraction that has just numbers in it, 18 over the square root of 3. Then we'll cross multiply. We have the square root of 3x equals 18. Then we'll divide by the square root of 3 on both sides. Now we can't just leave it like that. We have to multiply by the square root in the denominator to rationalize the denominator. We're going to end up with 18 square root 3 up on top. Square root 3 times square root 3 is the square root of 9, or 3. Now 18 divided by 3 actually comes out nicely. 18 divided by 3 is 6. And then we still have that square root 3 at the end. Now we'll solve for y. We've got that y over 2 equals. And then we have 18 over the square root of 3. And then we'll cross multiply. Y times the square root of 3 equals, and then 2 times 18 is going to be 36. Then we'll divide by the square root of 3 on both sides. But we know we can't just leave it as 36 over the square root of 3. We have to rationalize the denominator by multiplying by the square root in the denominator. So we end up with 36 square root 3 on top, over, and then square root 3 times square root 3 is a square root of 9, or 3. We know that 36 divided by 3 actually comes out pretty. That's 12. And then we have the square root of 3 there at the end. All right, I'll see you guys at some point. See you later.